You don't want your picture taken?
No.
Okay. Well, I won't. I've been just recording audio.
Well, let's see.
When we last left off, my mother was a teenager and had been arrested for something. Now, what was it she got arrested for?
Who?
You.
She never got arrested.
Dang it.
You were trying to fish for
I was hoping.
You were hoping.
Shouldn't have you.
Well, I just thought if there was a story I hadn't heard, maybe you could tell me what it was. Okay.
He's trying to arrest your conscience.
I just got away all the time.
All right, fine.
Never got caught.
So my mother was relatively good, is what you're saying.
She was excellent. She was very good. She had high grades,
Oh, yeah?
and she had good friends.
Was she a Girl Scout?
So
Were you a Girl Scout?
I was first a bluebird and then whatever was the next thing, campfire girl, and they were so boring.
yeah,
They were
you were
boring.
campfire girl.
Yeah, but they were just so boring. So I joined Girl Scouts because they were having more fun, and I got my roller skating badge and my camping badge. We did a lot of things in Girl Scouts
Yeah.
that was way more fun than the campfires.
Now, you were in Girl Scouts, but just for the movie discount.
Well, I learned. No, I went to the classes because I learned the different knots and the different things that they did. But
Okay.
I really didn't care for it. I just wanted it really for the dime. I thought I could have to pay in the movies.
Okay. So did you encourage your girls to join the Girl Scouts, or was that something they just...
No, that's something they evidently picked up in school.
Okay.
Because we didn't have good leaders then. So sometimes we didn't even have a meeting. So
Okay. I did a little research because I'm not a historian, and it turns out I don't know anything about the past. But I've figured a few things out. First of all, my mother was born during World War II because it took multiple stages to end. I assumed for some reason that I was remembered correctly that it ended in 44, and that was wrong. I think the Italians surrendered in 44, but the Germans didn't surrender until May of 45, which is after she was born. And then the Japanese didn't surrender until August. Who knew that the Japanese would... It's because they were so far away. It's hard to get to them. There's no direct route. And all the roads are under construction. You got to go around, you know. We were like, heck with it. Just blow it all up.
well, when they did decide to surrender, it was after the second A bomb.
Right.
Yeah, Truman
Now-
told them that we had another one that surrender or, and
Yeah,
then your generation wanted to apologize to the Japs.
No.
That
Oh,
made
mine,
the
hers.
veterans so mad.
My generation made movies about it.
Oh.
But about that, the A-bomb that's a new thing. That was new technology at the time. Like, that was the first time that had been used. In fact, one of the reasons we used that is because they didn't believe we had it. So, do you remember hearing about that, like, as something that... The ability to destroy an entire city had never existed before.
Well,
So-
we were stationed in Roswell, New Mexico. Nothing but desert. And all of a sudden, some ranchers, I wish I'd saved those newspapers, came in and said, our cattle have been dying. What's wrong? Well, then congressmen, when the government comes in, you know something's wrong. Well, they had Congressman galore out there. The paper was silent. They were told no more. And it was because they were testing, not the A-bomb, what was in it or something. I don't know exactly how it was. But they were testing it. And the ranchers, I don't know how many ranchers lost their cattle. But the government paid them and so they got new cattle again.
It's like radiation poisoning was killing the cattle?
Yeah, I guess that's what it was.
Huh.
I should have kept the papers. There were two papers that came out. One with cattle are dying, and the next one said, "Oh, all congressmen are coming out." You know, so.
Okay, so did you personally, or did the general public know that we had the A-bomb before we used it? Or did you find out as that...
No, we found out afterwards. You know.
Okay.
There was a well-kept secret.
Okay. Do you remember when you found out the war was over? Was there like a moment where... Because you remember when you were told that the war was on, that it had started. But do you remember the ending of it? Was there a moment you remember where like you realized it's over?
Well, I
We
know.
get back to it.
Let's see, which one was it? D-Day and the E-Day. I think it was Japan when they surrendered because it was because there was one fellow we called Tex because he was from Texas and he always wore cowboy boots only in the BOQ. He was not allowed to wear them. He had to be on uniform in war. And he came over to the pool all dressed, jeans, cowboy boots, cowboy hat. War's over. With that, he dove into the pool. So
That's how you found out. A cowboy told you.
yeah,
And
he
then jumped-
told us. Well, also we knew something was up because we saw the planes coming in. They were in the thing there, and I thought, oh. And then all of a sudden, the trucks came up to take the German prisoners, and so we thought, what could be? And then this fellow says the war's over. Well, we didn't believe it. I mean, and we finally found out it was. Because we had enlisted men coming over to the officers' club, and but they were chased out for fear the general would go after them because
Okay.
they weren't out of the service yet.
Mm.
And so we went over. That night, Laura came in early, and that night we went over to the officers' club just to help celebrate, and we had the baby and Pat. And so it was. We left because everybody was getting drunk, and one fella said he had his violin there, and Laurie says, "Oh, I can play that. Just play it." So I don't remember. He only knew 2 tones. He played something, and he said, "Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, play it again." And Laurie said, "Oh dear, what did I start?" So we left. And they straightened everything out, and then they said that little by little they would go out. They had to go out by when they came in or something. There were points. I don't remember how that went. And my mother and dad came and picked. They wanted me to come home with them then, and because what they did, they took the officers and sent him to Hobbs. He was sent to Hobbs, which was about 100 miles, I think, away. Because that's where they were taking the pilots that couldn't do anything after they came home.
They were nervous wrecks.
Oh, they were. And they kept saying, "There's act, 2 o'clock," and stuff like so. They asked these guys, and your grandfather's very calm and never really got excited. And they wanted those type to see if when they got in the plane with them, and those guys flew. I didn't know it. I thought it was Lawrence, and to help him with this. And I don't know how he was there until his number was up, and then he came home. So I don't know how that was handled.
Okay, so just to recap the story so I get it straight here. So you took my mother and Pat to go live with your parents in Dallas?
No, and me. The 3 of us went.
Right,
And
to Dallas?
Janice and Pat and me. We went to my mother's, and then Lori got off a pass, so that way he had built a trailer. And so we put the cribs and everything in that, and then we followed my mom and dad home. And I told them, "We better go in the daytime, otherwise we have to go first because we have to get the cattle out of it. It's open country
Oh,
in
yeah.
that time." And when we had Buddy and we'd let her out, and then she'd bark and get them away, and then we'd go little creeping. When
Moving
we
the
get
cows.
back, then I'd open the door and then she'd come again. So,
Smart dog.
huh?
She was a smart dog.
Well, yeah, and we were and then one time we went to see Grandma and Grandpa Crippen at Elmhurst for the weekend. Well, we thought, our neighbors next door said, "Why don't you leave Buddy home? The boys like him." I said, "Well, that's a good idea," and so we left Buddy home, and so when we got back, Joe's there waiting for us. And I said, "What happened?" She said, "Your dog won't eat. It doesn't do anything. It dug a hole and there it sits." And she said, "I don't know if it's dead yet or not." And so we went over there. And as soon as she heard our voice, she got up, but she was a little wiggly. And so I picked her up, took her in, got some water down her. And from then on, no matter where we went, she went with us.
She was just so depressed that you had left her.
Yeah.
She thought you weren't coming back.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah, so we never realized that. Remember, at the time we went on a boat. Where were we? We had a rowboat. We were all in it, and the dog we left in the car, but with the windows were open. And so while we were out there, all of a sudden we look. Here's Buddy swimming to the boat. Remember that?
Determined.
She had to be
Boiled up.
with us always. So she was a good dog. So,
Okay, so again, so when the war was ended, so you moved to Dallas. Is that where you wound up?
yeah,
Texas?
we wound up in Dallas, but we didn't like Dallas. We decided.
Okay,
Lori-
but while he was working with these other pilots, but before he got out of the Air Force,
right,
was
and
he still in New Mexico and you were in Texas?
Mhm, until October. He got home in October,
Okay,
and the war was over in August. In October, he came in and he said, "Well, maybe we'll look for a house here." And so Dad says, "Well, take your time, stay here with us." And so he decided he'd go to SMU first and finish his engineering course. So he went in and the second semester. I don't know how he did it, but anyways, he did. He did a semester there, but by the time he was through, we decided we did not want to live in Texas, and so we packed up, and he called his mother, and she says, "Yeah, come on." So then we went there, and then we found a house in Yorkfield, and
the Yorkfield's right next to Elmhurst, or part is a
yeah,
it's a neighborhood in Elmhurst.
so that's where we lived until
So that's where they were across the street from your grade school,
yeah.
right? Okay.
Well, kindergarten.
I don't think you went to grade school there. First, I think
Kindergarten,
went
just
to,
kindergarten.
Lincoln School. Yeah, we were back. Then we built a house in Elmhurst, and that's where we
Well,
were.
at some point, she had her class come on a field trip to your house so they could look at Dee Dee through the window, right? This is where I'm trying to line up the dots. here.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Then you
So,
were.
yeah,
so
you
it
were
was first grade.
Yeah, that's right.
There we go.
Good catch.
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep track of it all.
Yes, you are.
It's a
I'm
lot.
glad you do.
That's why I'm taking notes. I'm trying to figure it all out. So, but again, as the end of his service, my grandfather was working with pilots who had been fighter pilots. They had been in the war.
Yeah, they had been in combat and they were nervous like anything else.
So was
Yeah.
he helping them learn to fly again?
No, not to learn to fly, to try to
Settle
get
down.
over the planes coming at them or the bombs
Settle
going to hit
down,
them.
yeah.
Okay. Was it just therapy sessions? Because
yeah,
it
just-
sounded like you said that they were flying
Mhm.
with him. So he was taking them into planes and helping them to.
They were flying, and he was in the swing seat between them. See,
Okay.
there's a swing seat that they put there for the instructor,
Okay.
and he was there, so he could grab anything he had to, and try to get them over. Just there's no planes here. The war's over and things like that, and
So he would take them into an airplane,
Mm-hmm.
and they would fly together, so he could help them just sort of adjust to
Yeah.
peacetime.
mhm.
That sounds like difficult work.
You're not kidding.
It was.
Okay.
He was a nervous wreck when he got home.
I can imagine. That's got to be a stressful job.
He
but,
said he didn't make any progress.
you
He
know,
didn't
makes
make any at all. So I don't know what they did with these fellas then.
okay.
So, because that's one reason he was still an instructor. They would come back, and they couldn't take over at all. They had to have the controls, and so the students wouldn't learn then. So
were any of these guys that he had taught that were sent over, or was it
As
just
far as I know, I don't know. He never
Okay.
said. Probably not, or he would have told me.
okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the kind of thing you tend to hear about normally. It's you get to that part of the story in history class, and they're just like the war was over, people went home, and that's it. So there's the inevitable cleanup at the end that you don't hear about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think too they made a mistake, didn't they? When they discharged him, and that was it. And they should have had some go and talk to in the hospitals and get their nerves taken care of. Well, Gil
Right.
was a mess. He started smoking again. He had a bad heart.
Well, he was a pilot, or was
he
he?
was the pilot of B-25s.
And where was he? You
He
said
was
Africa and France.
in Italy, and bombing Hungary and all that.
Okay.
And but Jenny said at night he'd holler, "Ah!" and he'd get up and sit up, and he was flying. And she said then she'd have to wake him up and put him back down.
Oh,
And
like night terrors.
She said she had quite a time at times with him.
He
So-
crashed in Alaska, right? Wasn't it Alaska?
Yeah, he crashed in Alaska.
when was that?
Well, he stayed in the service. He finally got pretty good, and he stayed in, and he had to go to another field for something. So when he got there, the weather was closing in, so he said, "We won't go, guys. We'll go tomorrow." And there was a major there, arrogant, and said, "We're going now." He says, I don't want to get stuck here. So, because he outranked him, Gil was only a captain then,
Mhm.
he got in, and so he got in the pilot's seat. Gil did. He says, "I'm flying." He says, "But you don't know the weather and everything, and I know how to get there. I'm flying." So he did. And Gil was the co-pilot, and let's see what. No, he wasn't. He kicked him out. He had a co-pilot there because he was in the back with the rest of the people, or the fellas, and the weather closed in, foggy, and he got too low. They told him he was coming in. There was a forest there that they had to go, and then the airfield was there. And he crashed into the forest.
He hit the trees on his way to the.
And so Gil got out. He had a broken leg, and took us a limb and strapped his up so he could walk with his belt and everything. And then went and helped get everybody out. But they couldn't get the major out. He was pinned in. So
Oh.
they got themselves away from the plane in case it exploded.
Sure.
And
But they didn't find him for a while because I remember being at grandma's and we
Yeah.
still didn't know. And I was
When about was
6 or
this?
7 or something.
So this is late 40s then. early 50s.
Early 50s or something. I don't know. I was little, but I can't remember. Probably 5 or 6 or something.
I don't think he was
at
in
the
his
most.
50s. No, he had to
Early
be in
50s,
his-
if that. Yeah, maybe 1950 or earlier. Or later, I mean.
No, he was in his Gil.
No.
No,
The
I
year,
was
not his
in
age,
the- in
the
the-
year.
Oh, the year.
Yeah. It would have been in the early
Let's see.
50s.
Where was he first?
I was pretty small.
It was the 50s.
Early,
Okay.
Very
Yeah,
early.
because the end of 49, because I don't know whether they couldn't get the telephone to us, and so they went through short wave
Okay.
to let us know, and then the short wave picked it up here, and then called us and told us he was in a plane
a couple
crash.
days or something.
Okay.
That's how we got the message. But he was all right.
Hmm.
And his leg wouldn't heal. Now, this was in October, and I guess it was starting to get dark and not much sun.
Oh, in Alaska, yeah.
Yeah. And so they sent him to, I wrote and told him to take vitamin C and which vitamins to take, but he didn't believe in vitamins. So they finally sent him down to California, where it was sunny. And guess what they gave him?
Vitamin C.
Vitamin C. Oh, I'm so smart.
That's true.
Yeah, you just can't help it.
All right, so Gil was Grandpa's brother,
hmm
but they had another brother.
Yeah, Ray. He was
Ray.
the oldest.
Now,
Chemist.
was Ray in the service during the war?
No, he enlisted, and they said they needed chemists for different discoveries, and he was in some secret work, and I have no idea. He would never talk about it.
But he was working for the military, but
For
not
the
as a soldier,
military,
as a
yeah.
chemist.
Yeah, DuPont
Oh,
in where was it? Fort Madison, Iowa. That's where he was stationed. I mean, he wasn't in the service. He was a civilian working on this.
oh, so he was in the private sector.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but probably doing government work of some kind.
Right, he was.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
interesting. 3 different aspects of of the involvement in the war.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh.
well, that's very interesting. Well, I'm just throwing my glasses on the floor. I like to do that every now and then, just to test the durability. All right. So apparently, also in 1945, the microwave was invented. Now, do you remember that changing your life?
We didn't get one right away. I didn't believe in them.
Yeah,
Well,
a lot of people
you
didn't.
know, if they say it's going to be done in 2 minutes or something, forget it.
I like to wait.
I don't have good notes, but it seems like the year that you were born, 1945, Japan and Germany both surrendered. The microwave was invented. The first computer was built. The UN was founded. And the Slinky went on sale. Again, changing mankind forever.
For what?
Really?
The Slinky.
That has a shelf life of 30 years or something.
Not the Twinkie, the Slinky.
So Slinky, oh.
That's
what?
different.
That
I mean,
was in 45.
they'll last about the same amount of time, but only
Yeah.
one walks down the stairs. The other kind of
Slinkies.
rolls.
Oh, that. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Slinky
Yeah,
was a
we
big
had one.
thing.
Yeah.
I have just like I have like a series of notes here. Now, first of all, you said you didn't have a TV for a while. I mean, you said you watched Howdy Doody, so at some point you got a television.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember?
And there was small screen.
Yorkfield,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah,
It was a
Yorkfield.
big box with a little round screen.
Okay.
Or square screen, I think it was round.
Now, was that something that you and Grandpa talked about? Like, I know there's a lot of people who were kind of like, they didn't want it in their home. They didn't want their kids to be exposed to it. Other people are just like, it's entertainment. Did you guys have any kind of feeling about it one way or another?
We were curious, I guess. And so he says, we'll get one. He says, if we don't want, if they got something on there the kids shouldn't watch, we turn it off. And so he was very quiet about what he would say. And he never disciplined the kids because they never needed it. So, and
Okay.
We were good little children. He said about being arrested, but tell him about how I almost had you excommunicated. Remember that story of I was in high school and somebody called the deacon. You had a deacon's meeting about my
oh,
we had
that.
a retreat
oh,
that we were on.
Well, that was because we sent her to camp, and she
No, it was
and
a
the
retreat.
girls were
No, wait,
gazelles.
you're in high school at this point?
Yeah,
And
freshman
this is-
retreat. We went to a retreat.
It was a
weekend
retreat from church,
Okay.
and we told them to behave themselves. Norm and I and Billy, who was Billy Joe, and her,
Donna, Chris,
Donna Lohan,
Chris.
Chris
Chris
Judy
Beal.
Mather,
Yeah, I don't know if Judy was there.
and anyways, they
Yeah.
called themselves the Gazelles.
We didn't.
So you
call
had a
ourselves.
gang.
We got that name at the retreat. We were named at the
Yeah.
retreat.
The
And
Gazelles.
so,
I can see
anyways,
that.
what they did, Joyce O'Daniel was, she knew more than everybody, and I guess, I don't know. So what they did, they took her pajamas
We froze them.
and dumped them in water and then put them in the freezer.
So terrible.
And put what?
Huh?
Put what?
We put them in water and froze
Put it in
them.
water and then put them in the freezer because it was wet.
Little things. like
So when she
You turned
came
her
in,
pajamas into a block of
I think
ice.
that would be a shocking thing.
That would be.
so when she went to go to bed, there was frozen pajamas.
Well, we
Well,
snuck out at
anyways,
night.
Evelyn, her mother, called me when they got home. She says, "You don't know how to raise your child," and blah 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 blah. And I said, why? What did she do? And she told me, well, I started to laugh.
Because it's funny.
And she says, I'm going to have you all excommunicated. All you, and she was calling all the mothers. Well, we got together and we laughed and laughed. And we said, boy, they should have done more.
Well, it was
Hold on. Weren't you
yeah.
Baptist at this point?
Yeah.
Can you be excommunicated as a Baptist? I thought that was a
No.
Catholic
She
thing.
just
Okay.
But
So
that's
she
what
was
she said.
she was threatening you with a Catholic punishment, even though you were all Baptists.
And they were liberal Baptists.
Oh, okay. That's kind of the same,
yeah,
I guess.
liberal, yeah.
But,
Oh gosh, that's funny. I've never been threatened with excommunication. There are several churches I'm not allowed to teach in, but
yeah, probably because of evolution. Yeah.
no, there was this. I went and I taught how I did a Sunday school lesson on how you can read the gospel into Green Eggs and Ham by Dr. Seuss.
Oh.
And it's a bit of a stretch, but it works. So I started off with a little puppet show to a song, and then I sort of taught, like, here's how you can find the imagery of the gospel in Green Eggs and Ham. And apparently somebody was offended by that. Now, most of the class wanted me to come back and teach again, but somebody thought, well, this is just inappropriate. He's
It only
doing
takes one.
sock puppets. Right.
it
and
just
so,
takes one.
right.
Yeah.
One, it was just one grumpy person. Because I had friends at this church. That's how I was invited in. And they're like, it's one person. We know who it is. And they don't like anything. But the pastor is afraid to stand his ground. And so they don't want you to ever come back. I'm like, okay.
They lost.
Can't make anyone happy. What are you going to do?
No.
Anyway,
That's all you can do.
I've been kicked out of a few churches.
Well,
But-
I guess she couldn't kick us out.
Tried to have you excommunicated.
But they didn't have good youth leaders like you did. You had good youth leaders.
I did. I have
We
to
didn't.
say.
And it was boring.
Good help is hard to get. Okay, let's see. If I can go pop culture for a second. When my mother was 1, the movie It's a Wonderful Life came out. Do you remember seeing that or hearing about it? Or is that something that became like a sort of staple later?
I saw the movie. I mean, on TV, or did I see it? I don't remember, but I remember seeing
I
it.
think it gained popularity as the years went on. 'Cause
Right, I feel like it was because of television, like that eventually went on.
Yeah.
Was that a thing? Did they play movies on television when you were a kid?
I can't remember. Can you? Maybe it was.
I don't remember sitting that long.
I don't remember.
No, it was
whether
just
I must have seen this
half-hour
at York.
shows, yeah.
I
No.
don't know.
Right. Did they watch a lot of TV when they were kids?
No.
Yeah, we had a TV.
But did
No,
you
did
let
we
them,
watch
did you
a
watch?
lot? We didn't watch a lot because
No, they
we
didn't.
were outside.
Well, there
all the
wasn't
time.
much on for them. There was Miss Frances. Do you remember her? And Howdy
Yeah, I
Doody.
don't- Howdy Doody. I remember Mickey Mouse Club later on.
Right? Yeah, the Mickey
But-
Mouse Club.
We were outside most of the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Burns and Allen, Jack Benny,
Yeah,
The
Mhm.
Honeymooners, I Love Lucy.
those were a little bit later. Yeah.
I watched
Yeah.
I Love Lucy at your house. That's where I got exposed to it.
Oh.
And I realize now I've probably seen every episode because I was at your house so often and that was on in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I watched too much television as a kid. That's why my brain doesn't work. It's because there's so much TV in there.
Now you're on the computer a lot.
Yeah, I know. It's like I haven't experienced real life at all. I'm too busy watching other things.
Well, get out in the kayak. Yeah.
Keep penning.
So in 1947, the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. Now, do you remember hearing about that?
Oh, yeah.
All right, what do you remember about that being discovered? Because, like, I know in retrospect what it means to us now in terms of apologetics, but do you remember what the talk was?
No, I don't remember, but we were all excited about it. I remember that. Well, we saw when we were in Israel. We went to that museum and saw these Dead Sea Scrolls. They're in a glass thing that you couldn't open because it's all so they don't disintegrate.
No moisture.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's got to be
Yeah.
vacuum sealed and bulletproof.
But they're accurate. They had Isaiah. I remember that, and that's accurate in what we have.
Mhm.
And what other ones did they give? There was a tour.
They had them at the Museum of Science and Industry. I don't know. Pat would remember when because we went down and it was in.
Well, Jenny went and saw it when she was in college, so that would have
So
been
then
somewhere between like 2000 and 2005.
So they had it in
It was on
Florida.
It was dark. I remember very dark, and
Yeah.
then just a little bit of light and then glass. So yeah,
Mhm.
they protected them. Yeah, that was exciting.
And they kept good records of the the Jews they gassed, and they're still trying to search for them, for the ones, because they had it the time that it went in. And,
Really?
Oh yeah, it was all in this museum, and then they had one with the children. You know, they gassed children too,
Well, they killed everybody.
and Germans keep good records, so they had all these names. So they were checking on all these names. Remember, they had telephones there, and where else they had I don't know, but they wanted to find out where they were, the ancestors, or rather their children and grandchildren. They were still working on that.
Hmm.
So
Interesting. Now, I have written down that rock and roll began in 1951. Now, I don't know if there was like some kind of announcement where they're like, all right, from now on, rock and roll will be on the air. So, the popular music of the day before that was things like the Rat Pack, like Buddy Holly. Do you remember the sort of surgence of youth culture and magazines aimed at teenagers and rock and roll on the radio? Do you remember
there
that?
probably was, but I ignored it.
Okay. Wasn't it?
I didn't allow that music in the house.
Oh, no? Why is that?
Because I hated it.
Okay.
To me, it wasn't music.
Was that because you couldn't hear it well, or just because you
No.
could hear it and you hated it?
It was just junk.
Okay.
And I can sing as well as one of those other ones. Oh, all you have to do. Gee,
Oh,
No.
don't get me started on that.
Well, we weren't
Apparently
here.
so.
so-
And you would love the music today.
I was gonna say what has come since would just offend you. Frankly, it offends me sometimes, but only when it should. I've got written down that if we can go to science for a bit, and I doubt this will I doubt this would have affected your life directly, but in 1953, the DNA double helix was discovered. So the molecular structure of DNA, was that something that anyone talked about?
Mm-mm.
I don't think so.
No.
Okay. That's the kind of thing I know because I'm a science nerd.
Yeah.
It'd be another 20 years before we really knew what it did. We're like, oh, now we know what this thing looks like. What does it do? We don't know yet. So in the 70s, we figured that out. So that's the slow history of genetics. But in the mid-50s, I have written down that racial segregation in public schools was ruled unconstitutional. And so that's when, busing was instituted to make sure that schools were multiracial. Is that a thing that affected any of the schools that were near
Not
you?
where we lived. Though.
Not where we were, but during the war, when I went down, to Houston to be married, and then I roomed and board in a house there with some of the other wives. I decided to I asked the girl how I get downtown, so I took a bus. Well, I liked sitting back, so I sat in the back. Well, then all these black people got on, and one was pregnant, so I moved over. I said, here. And she goes like that. And I thought, well, what is the matter with these people? And the bus pulls over, and he says, Yankee. And I'm looking around.
The driver.
Yeah, the driver. Yankee. And then they all looked at me. I said, what? And he says, get up here. And there was a front seat there. He says, where are you from? I said, well, near Chicago. Oh. And he says, I suppose you sit next to a black person. I said, well, I would in the L, yeah. And he says, we don't do that down here. Then I saw them all start, because all the other seats were vacant behind me. So they could all sit down now.
Uh-huh.
They have to sit behind a white person. And they have to wait until that person leaves. I don't know how they figure that. Anyways, from then on, I sat in the front. And there were whitewashed balls and balls in dark, or what they call it? Black, I guess.
I think you used the word colored, didn't they?
Maybe it said colored. I don't remember what it said. I was so surprised to see this.
So that kind of segregation didn't exist in Chicago.
Oh, and it was in Houston,
But okay.
because when we went to one of the dances there, there were some black fellas sitting there alone. Well, we're used to blacks. And so I sat down next to one, and he got up right away.
Huh.
And I thought, what's the matter? And so I said, you can sit down. He said, no. So with that, he walked over, and I thought, now what did I do? And so Lori came over, and I said, that fella got up. And I said, look at all the room here. And he says, no. He says, they're not allowed to sit near us. Now, can you imagine that?
No.
And he was, I thought, well, why did they come? I don't see any black women. And so the two of them, there were two of them together, left right away. And one of the fellas that came over that Lori knew, and he says, good thing they left. We would have beaten them to death.
Well, that's why.
How about that? And they're fighting a war.
Mm-hmm.
That made me mad. I thought, good heavens, these people are stupid. And then one day in Roswell, we were going down the street, and a car bumped us, colored. So they said, and it was, it was his fault. And so they said, well, we'll throw the book at him, the insurance man said. Well, and so Lori pipes up, why? It's our fault. We hit him. And he says, I thought they hit you. No, he says, well, I hit him. They didn't do anything with the fellow then. He was an enlisted man, and they came over to our house one evening to thank us. And she had a little baby with her. And she said, we didn't know what we were going to do. She said, they said we owed a lot of money. And she said, he's an enlisted man, you know.
Sure.
Can you imagine they were doing this and then? This was 42 and 43.
Wait, so to get the story right, this other person hit your car.
Mm-hmm.
So my grandfather lied to protect him.
But we said we hit them. He of course figured out what was going on.
Sure.
And so he said,
Well, that's
we
awful
hit
decent of
them.
you.
So
I mean, I would have done the same thing, but you know, I like lying to insurance salesmen and government people anyway. So
Yeah, let's hear some more of that.
did
So
my grandfather know that he was an enlisted man at this time, or did he?
Well,
Find out?
he had his uniform on.
Okay, so he
You
was
had to
protecting
wear
him.
your uniform during the war.
All right, so he was helping out one of his fellow soldiers.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Well, he would have done it if it was a black man anyhow, because we don't believe in stuff like that.
Sure.
So.
Do you remember their names?
No, they
Okay.
were from Pennsylvania, and that's all I remember.
Okay, but you had him over for dinner after this.
Well,
You said
yes, and they had to. They came when it was dark, and they had to leave when it was
I
dark.
don't doubt it, man.
So, and then because he was a serviceman and he was an enlisted man, you weren't supposed to be with them. They were segregated, and the enlisted men had to stay by themselves, and the officers by themselves, and so
Oh, so my grandfather was an officer?
he was an enlisted man, a GI.
Okay,
So he wasn't an officer. So
well that guy was, but my grandfather was,
an officer.
what was his rank?
When he got out, he was a captain. He
Okay.
started as second lieutenant. He got his wings in second lieutenant bars, and then he got first lieutenant, and he was a first lieutenant until the war was over. And then when he got out, they put down he was captain.
Captain Crippen.
Yeah, that happened to all of us. I
Yeah,
was the first lieutenant when I got out, I was the captain.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what they did.
Well, it's a
So.
nice bonus, I guess. I don't know what it's worth to you, but
Well, Gil went up to, he was either lieutenant colonel or full colonel. And when he died, I don't remember which he was. I'll have to look
Yeah,
it
we were
up.
surprised.
Hmm?
We didn't even know
Yeah,
that he was that high ranking
oh yeah,
until he died. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
I'll have to look that up and see.
so
Well,
we're,
Bill would know. I'll have to ask Tom to ask Bill.
Were there black families at York or at the church you went to around this time in the 50s or 60s?
Did what?
Were there black families going?
No,
like,
there were no black families in Elmhurst, period.
at all. Okay.
So,
Right. And yet you still had a fairly good attitude about this. That, you know, even though you weren't raised in black neighborhoods, was that something that your parents instilled in you? That people are people? I mean, I know it went back several generations to the Civil War,
well, my great grandma, she told us, because she lived with us for a while, and she said, my mother told me that my dad, that's your father, talking to my great grandmother, wants me to make sure that you remember this. God is colorblind. He loves everyone. And he loves black, red. He says if they're already purple, he'd want them too. And she said, never treat anybody with a different color different. And her little finger was going. I can remember that. She was a little bird. She was 5'2", and her little finger. And she told us, and she said, and you remember it. And so, and I think we all did.
so I'm sorry, this was your great grandmother?
My great grandmother told us that. She was 2 when her father went into the service, Civil War. He never came back.
What was her name again?
Hannah
Was that Hannah Scher?
Scher.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So,
Well, that's a good legacy.
yeah.
Good.
So whether I got that from that or what, I don't know. I probably did.
Okay.
And where Laurie got it from, I don't know. But he didn't like people being mistreated. Neither one of us did. And when we found out what they were gonna nail him for everything. I mean, a little dash, a little bump on the right fender, because he came like this. Wait a minute now. No, I don't remember. I guess he was beside us. I don't know what it was and how it happened. But,
Fender bender, nobody got hurt.
no. It was just a little tap. Like, so.
Okay. So, my grandfather's brother stayed in the military.
Well, he got out first. He got out for a while, and they were both called back in. And
really?
Gil was building a house there in Yorkfield, about a block away from us. He and his dad, and his brother, and they finished it, and they were in there about a month or so, and he got noticed. It was the Korean War. They were going to take. They gave him his orders, Gil's. Well, Gil only had 2 children, and if you have 3 dependents, you'll go. But if you have 4, you have your choice. Well, we had 3 children and myself, so that's 4. So Laurie, when he got his notice, he had Captain Crippen report to Kelly Field, Texas, pick up your B-17 and your crew, and then they gave him the route to take, and so he had to go to Grant Field. And then that's where he was told that he didn't have to go if he had 4 dependents. So he called me and he says, I'm not going to go. I said, okay, come on home.
So they were going to send him to Korea.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep. And so Ginny took her 2 boys and went back to California to my Aunt Georgie and Uncle Billy, her folks, and lived there for 2 years. How long was he in the Korean War? He was 2 years in World War II in Europe. I don't remember now when, but that's where he went.
Okay.
Then when he came out, he was going to college too. He never even went to college. He had enlisted, and so when he came out, he decided not to get out. He was going to stay in. He said, "Not going to call me anymore," and he enjoyed the service because he was flying.
Okay.
And he was flying jets, which he liked. Gil didn't like it, Gil Jr. And when he graduated from college, he says, I'm going to stay here, and anybody who wants to see me, they have to come here. I'm not going to travel. Where is he? He travels all over now.
You never know what life's going to bring you.
Mm.
Now, I don't have Korea written down. This is one of those things that, like, my grasp of American history is weak. In my head, Korea and Vietnam are kind of the same thing somewhere in the 50s or 60s. I've got written down that Vietnam began in 55.
Mhm.
So when did the whole Korea thing start?
When what? The Korea?
Yeah.
Uh,
What I have written
it
down
was
is
before
55
Dee Dee was
Vietnam.
born,
50s?
in the 50s, I think.
Because
it
if you
went-
watch MASH.
Yeah.
Well, it's before, Korea was before Vietnam, right?
Oh, not.
Oh,
way
oh
before.
yes, yes.
Quite a bit
Definitely. Because the
Vietnam
Tom was called in for
65.
the Vietnam.
Okay, so I've got the wrong decade here. Because
Yeah.
again, this is my
Yeah.
Google Internet research.
Uh-huh.
I have written down that Vietnam War began in 55.
Oh, no. It
So
couldn't-
that's wrong.
No, right, yeah. It had to be 65 because
So mid 50s would have been the Korean conflict.
Yeah.
Korean would have been 50s, yeah.
Okay.
It had to be 50. Yeah, because we only had 3 children then. And Dee Dee was born in 52. And it was still going on there.
Oh wow. Okay.
So he was called back in 50 or 51 then.
Okay. So at that point you were already living in Elmhurst? Or
Yeah.
finishing the
We
house?
were living in Yorkfield. We had bought a house in Yorkfield.
Okay. So you hadn't built the house in
No,
Elmhurst yet?
no. Mm-mm.
Okay.
Not yet.
So he got called back into to the military, but because you had 3 kids and yourself, he had the option to not go, and he decided not to.
Yeah.
Okay. Was he working as an engineer at this point?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did he work for just one engineering firm, like just Page, his whole career? Or
Let's
were
see,
there
he
multiple
worked
companies?
for A. Lucas and Son in Peoria. Then we decided we would like to come back to Chicago. Then we came back and he worked for Mississippi Steel Company. Yeah, I think that was the name of it. And then Page was looking for fellas, and he liked the salary, so he took that. He liked his work. He became a assistant. What's the head of the
Manager?
Um,
Manager?
yeah, I guess that's what you call it. And so he stayed there till he retired.
Okay. Groovy. All right, so I have my list of historical footnotes, some of which are wrong apparently. So apparently not everything on the internet is accurate. We found something that's wrong. So in the mid to late 50s, the space race started. So Sputnik was launched. That was the first man-made satellite launched by the Russians in 57. And then later that year, they put a dog into orbit, which doesn't seem very nice to the dog.
No.
And then here, the first photo of Earth was taken from orbit in 59. Do you remember any of these stories coming out?
I thought they put a monkey in. I didn't know they took a dog.
Well, the Russians sent a dog. We sent a monkey. The monkey's
you
name
had
was
the
Ham.
monkey.
He was a chimp.
No.
So why he was named Ham, I don't know. But in 61, we sent a chimp into space. And then in 69, we put a man on the moon.
Right.
Which is quite an 8 years if you think about it. We went from sending a monkey into space to putting 3 men on the surface of the moon in 8 years.
Yeah.
Quite amazing.
It's a lot. So do you remember any of those stories coming out and hearing about that?
Probably. Dear, oh dear. I don't know. I mean,
Well, did you follow it, or did your kids follow it? I mean, like Tom was into machinery and engineering. Was he interested in the space race?
I don't know. You have to ask him. I don't
Okay.
know.
You weren't paying attention to him at that point? You got a lot of kids to keep track of. I know. I can barely keep track of mine, and there's only one of her. So we were putting monkeys in space, and you weren't paying attention to every monkey we shot up there? What were you busy doing?
She didn't like me.
I don't know.
Betty is against monkeying around.
Okay. Well, that takes out the space race. What were you doing in the 60s?
Raising kids,
Okay. How did that go for you?
fine. I liked it.
Okay.
Oh, I was teaching in Bible school. The vacation, you know, when kids out of school, then we have Bible class.
The VBS, the Vacation Bible School.
And we had that, and Norma and I always were in charge of the
Crafts, arts and
crafts
yeah, you did the
for
best.
7th and 8th graders. The pastor taught them,
Okay.
and then we had to get the crafts, and so that was fun. Then I was in Pioneer Girls. I was one of the teachers with June Volkman, and that's about it. Dee Dee had her heart surgery in 55.
55, okay.
We were in our house then, in Elmhurst.
Okay, so I think you had told me you moved into that house in 52, right?
Yeah.
So the kids all eventually went to York High School, right? All 5 of you?
Yeah. They
Okay.
all went to Europe.
That's where she went.
So, because the time span across which they were born was so great, you'd said that when the older girls got home from school and you had Larry, they would just take him. So, was it like you were, you know, the last two were sort of being born with pre-made babysitters?
Well, it could be, but see, my mother was sick with cancer.
Your mother.
And my mother, and
Okay.
I had her in bed. So I was taking care of her plus a baby. And so when the kids got home, they took her, or took him rather, and would take care of him. And how long was my mother? And we had her about a year, didn't we, before she died?
Yeah,
I think it was about that. So,
Okay.
and she accepted the Lord on her deathbed.
Yeah,
Oh,
tell him about that with the other grandma.
Well, Grandma, my mother really didn't care for Grandma. She says she's too religious, and so I always tried to keep them separate, you know, because Grandma Crippen would go right after people, you know, and so she called me, and I had finished her lunch, and I was going to take the dishes out, and she says, "I'd like to see Grandma Crippen." And I thought, oh no, I just can't take a fight at him. She said, "Please." I said, "All right, I'll call her." So I called Grandma Crippen, and she says, well, she said, "I've been waiting for this call. The Lord told me she was going to be calling me." And so she came over with her Bible, and she had been scrubbing her floor. She left it, but she still had her apron on. And she went upstairs, and I came up too, and then she said, "You go downstairs." And I said, "Okay." So, and then about an hour later or so, she came and told me, and my mother had changed. Wow. So and then she would come over and read the Bible to her and explain different things till she died. So.
Wait, you said that's Grandma Crippen, you said.
Grandma Crippen did that.
So that's her.
That's that's Laurie's mother.
Got it. So your grandmother.
My grandma.
Yeah.
Okay, so my great-grandmother, Crippen. Oh, wow, okay. Try to keep all these stories straight. I'm out of coffee, aren't I? I'm out of coffee. I'm feeling my brain slow down, and I'm like, oh,
It's
because
empty.
that's what I'm saying, is that I can feel my brain, the caffeine is wearing off. It's slowing down.
You out of fuel.
Frankly, I thought we'd get some more mileage out of the space race, so that was kind of a big deal, but apparently not everyone in the country was following NASA. But did you watch the moon landing in '69?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Tell me about that.
I don't remember.
Dang it.
All I know is Well, wait a minute. I can tell you about the first one. Harry Williams is here, and he worked on the mathematician. He was a mathematician on the mathematics to see exactly where he was going to land, where the ship is going to be, so he wouldn't drown. And he did it all. And Jean said, "Oh, you don't know how we were praying about that." And so when the flight went up, he said he had different ones praying that he made the right decision to these different figures, and perfect, absolutely perfect. And where he landed, the boat was not too far where they could go and get him.
So one of your neighbors did the math to figure out where the astronauts were going to land when they got
He's
back.
here. Harry,
yeah.
yeah, Harry's here.
What's his last name?
Williams.
Harry Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I can't imagine that.
Yeah.
And they had to be just good at it.
Yeah. Well, he was.
Figuring all that out.
Gene said he was offered vice president after about a year, and he says, "I have to pray about that." And so he came back and said, "No, the Lord wants me where I am." So because he was taking short missionary trips,
Huh.
and she said, one of the ladies said, "Boy, did he lose the money." She said, "Yeah, but we gained with the love with the Lord."
All right.
Yeah, that's good question, good answer.
Yeah.
So they're here. So,
Yeah. That's interesting.
we have a lot of. We got the president of Wheaton, and we got a lot of intelligent people here. Gosh.
Well, you're in good company then.
Yeah. Well, Harry's so nice. He has a Bible class here, and they don't travel anymore for anything, like that. But he's always friendly. Always, they always want to talk to Sam.
Well, about Christians and NASA, do you know what is one of the first things that the men in the lander did when they actually touched down on the moon? This was kept out of the press. But you know what Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin did? One of the first things they did when they landed?
They prayed, I think.
They had communion.
They had communion.
Yeah, they were like both elders in their church, and one of them had smuggled it aboard.
Mm-hmm.
And the official word from NASA was, you can't talk about this,
Yeah.
because, the atheists had sued them, because atheists are dumb. But that's one of the first things they did when they landed on the moon, was to have communion. I thought, that's one of the little secret tidbits that came out in the 50th anniversary there. Like, and is the first...
It was
I don't
not. It was not moonshine either.
No. Right, communion wine, not moonshine. The first a mission or two before that, when the men had orbited the moon, it was like New Year's Eve, like the year before or something. And when they broadcast their message from the other side of the moon, they read the first chapter of Genesis, and then wished everyone a Happy New Year.
Yeah.
So there were apparently a collection of godly people exploring the universe, which is it's fun to hear those things.
And working on it too.
Mm.
Yeah, with Harry working, and now he's got a grandson. His daughter Hani is married to what's his name, Brady. Works for NASA in San Francisco, but they live about an hour away because the rents are so high.
I wouldn't want to live anywhere near San Francisco.
And I'm sure he would like to be out of there, wherever.
Yeah, well, you go where the jobs are.
Well,
All right. Well, let's see where we are here. All right, that's about an hour there. So I'm going to take a break,
okay.
and then you want to stick around and do some more stories?
What time is it?
Oh, it's a good
we have
question.
to do lunch.
It's 10 to 7.
About 20 till, so
20 to what?
do you go at noon?
Yeah, we're 12:30.
Oh, okay, well then you have a little more time.
All right, so let's take 5 and then do a little bit more.